And all right, we are recording. This is the official first podcast of TMS.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'll say how this came up. We have coffee with the principal every once in a while. Coffee with the principal.
And that's parents and you, pretty much.
Parents and me, pretty much. Usually, counselors or some non-teaching staff.
A few grandparents, maybe.
A few grandparents, a few of everything, and we had a really good session a few months ago. And at the end of it, one of the dads said, "It's really unfortunate that we didn't record this and send it out to everyone." And hence the podcast idea was born. I'm like, yeah, we should. And so I'm not going to record big meetings, but I figured it would be nice to talk to staff. Parents can get to know us, but more importantly, get to know what we're thinking about and what we're excited about working about.
Here. Just like we look for student thinking, they might be looking for teacher thinking.
I think so. I hope so. Yeah. I hope so. So we'll see. We'll see if we get some views, and if so, then we'll make more.
Yeah. Give us more stuff.
That's right. And so the format is, I think I've named it Principal Morton Asks. And so my question for you and for us today is, Mr. Hinrichs, what is a middle schooler? And we have, between the two of us, worked with thousands of them.
Yes.
Thousands and thousands.
Tens of thousands.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I don't consider myself an expert in psychology, but I am a bit of an expert on 11, 12, and 13-year-olds.
Yes, you are.
For better or for worse.
Yes,
when I thought of, who could I talk to about that, I couldn't think of anyone better than you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's an honor to throw my hat in the ring and try to propose an answer to that question. Well, I knew that question was coming.
Yeah.
And as I was thinking through, what's kind of the first thing I would say is, well, when you have a middle schooler, you have a human who's on a continuum. Yeah. In the midst of a whole lot of other people that are other places on that continuum, because an incoming 6th grade boy is so different from an outgoing 8th grade girl. Mm-hmm. And in fact, some of those outgoing 8th grade boys are even less mature than the incoming 6th grade girls. So you've got this, fantastic continuum of these little human beings. So I would say, there's no one way to define a middle schooler. But what are some things that, we see is typical of middle schoolers? Well, for one, we kind of called it the fog years because there's a fog around their head that doesn't let them see much beyond themselves.
Right. And that's not a bad thing necessarily.
No,
it's like it really is a time where you probably should be working on yourself and thinking about yourself.
Right. And one of the big challenges our kiddos have nowadays is they want so much to see beyond that fog. They so much want to see what other people are thinking. And with the social media that is just calling to them through that fog, it's confusing to be inside your own head as a 13, 14-year-old, let alone having everything else coming at you.
Social media has changed students. I don't know if we want to go down that rabbit hole for too long.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, it's a whole nother That's a whole nother podcast. But what I would say about and I always use the example of band concerts. If you go to the 6th graders in their beginning band concert, usually they're over at Vail Ranch headquarters or wherever. Yeah. They can knock out about 3 different notes, and it doesn't sound very good. And 3.5 years later, at the end of the year concert for 8th grade, it sounds like a professional adult musicians that you would hire. And so that 3 years, it's not just band, it's those kids. They grow 2 feet, some of them. Yeah. They become a completely different person.
You especially see that expressed in the arts by a child, though, how they progress, because that art reflects so much of who they are as a person and what their maturity does. So
it does.
By all means, music is going to go.
Well, it's like the manifestation of it, but it happens across the board. They all changed so much over those 3 years. And you taught pretty much exclusively.
I've taught exclusively 8th grade, and in my response to the 6th grade to 8th grade kid, since I'm so entrenched in the 8th grader, which is a 13 or 14-year-old kid, I just know them, recognize them really well, and every once in a while I'll be out at lunch or on the quad, and along comes this person who does not look like they belong in my school.
Right.
Because, I don't see them in my classroom, and hence it's a little 6th grader who's shorter, who's got a childlike face, who's got an air of innocence to them that an 8th grader just does not have.
No.
And they're very, very different kids. So, hence that continuum.
A 6th grader is much more like an elementary kid in a lot of ways.
Right.
In other words, they are still very adult-centered. They want to please their parents. They want to please their teachers.
Mm-hmm.
7th grade, less so.
Right.
Obviously very transitional. You know, a lot of times, by the time someone's mid-8th grade, you know, parents aren't getting a lot of information anymore.
That's right.
It is much more about their peers. That's really the interpersonal transition that happens. It sure is. It goes from being, you know, pretty good balance, just like a 3rd grader would have or a 5th grader. But by the time you're an end of your 8th grader, man, it is a high percentage of your life is centered around your peers and friends.
In science, we use the word equilibrium.
Yeah.
And for that little 6th grader, you know, that kind of view of authority and view of self, you know, those are rather separated, and those things get tangled up. And what I say is that, you know, the 8th grade child wants all of the freedom that an adult has and none of the responsibility that an adult has. And so hence we have this huge conflict, you know, and you might call it the middle school angst.
Yeah.
You know, that a child has, is they really desire, they see that freedom, they want that freedom, they taste that freedom every once in a while. Yeah. They feel, especially in 8th grade, 14 years old, they feel old enough to handle that freedom. And they really have no idea what they're getting themselves into with something as, in a sense, precious as freedom is.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. Right, because the younger kids are willing to delegate the authority to the adults.
Right.
You know, they're like, well, we know ultimately you're in charge. 8th graders don't always see eye to eye.
Yeah, they want to, you know, set their time when they can come home. They want to set their time with, you know, who the friends are they're going to see. And, you know, if there's any parents watching this, mom and dad, you have to do that hard work of telling them, oh, no, you may not, and, oh, yes, you can.
Right.
And, you know, sorting out the difference between the, oh, yes, you can, freedom that they can have, but still asserting that parental authority so necessary to protect them from the misuse of freedom.
That's right. Well, and that trickles into instruction, too, because you cannot teach an 8th grader or a 7th or 6th grader like a college kid, you know, where, you know, tons of freedom. You know, we don't even track if you come to class. We're going to lecture, but count on you to do a lot of the classwork at home or whatever. You also can't, you know, treat them like an elementary student because they want some freedom. They want that ability to
hold their hand through it all.
So they need freedom, but also with tons of structure.
Exactly. Right.
And
this is exactly who you have when you have a middle schooler.
Yes. Yeah.
And now enter into that mix their notions of their peers. And, you know, a poor 14-year-old kid just doesn't realize how heavy on their shoulders the opinion of their peers is. And, you know, when they get out of high school, and we all look back and realize, why did I think their opinion mattered so much?
Right.
So, you know, put yourself back into the mind of a middle school kid, and there are a whole number of people that have thoughts about you, and those are, in a sense, high-stakes thoughts. And so you're going to try to position yourself in such a way that you appear to them, you know, in a sense, as meeting their cool criteria. And it certainly may be different from group to group to group, you know. And trying to learn the economy of each group on how to satisfy your cool landing in each one of those is just, you know, runs havoc for kiddos. And this is where that social media enters in because there's Makes it worse. Yeah.
Instead of comparing yourself to 1,000 kids here, it's, you know, millions worldwide, which makes it complicated. But that's maybe another real distinct quality or characteristic of a middle schooler is you're starting to realize, oh, there's a pecking order in this world.
Right.
And there's cool kids, and there's smart kids, and there's the jocks, and where do I fit in? And,
what's my thing?
Yeah, what's my thing, and where do I fit in? And that's tough, and I think that's probably part of the charm too. That's why, you know, you've probably been doing this 30 years.
37.
Okay, yeah. But it is, you know, kind of being a help or. I think what I like most about middle school is you feel like you're still having a big impact. You know, you probably would on kindergarten and first graders, but that's not my wheelhouse. I couldn't do that.
You're right. A lot of impact there, but can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've done 27 years now in public education, 11 of it middle school, but almost all of it 5th through 9th. I mean, you know, it's kind of the same thing, just middle school extended. But I've always liked that about it. It's like, they think they know, but they don't, and they need us there to make sure we're providing that structure, whatever you want to call it.
And that's sure what our staff and our families and our parents and our larger social structure need to understand is, you know, you do have to come to a middle schooler with kind of kid gloves and help them find what it is about themselves. That's their jive, their thing, and then pour fuel on that, and then realize they'll find out later, oh, that's not my thing. But somebody sure helped me explore that as my thing when I was a middle schooler.
Right. And another thing about middle schoolers, and this is something I've been saying a lot, is there is such an emotional, physical change. They go through it so fast. I mean, we have a normal kid, and then we throw in massive amounts of hormones and you know, mood swings and everything that goes along with it. And then they don't have the ability to even describe what they're going through. And so it's like I always say to parents, you know, when you're talking to your kid, they're not always telling you exactly what happened, but they're definitely describing how it felt.
Right.
They don't have the ability to come home and say, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I've got 6 teachers instead of 1. I walk out to lunch. There's like 800 kids. Where do I sit? You know, some of my friends, if they're a boy, they're into girls now. They're into, you know, this and that. I thought I was the best basketball player on earth. I can't even make the middle school team. Right. You know, it's and so a lot of times our kids, they have these big emotions, but they don't even always have the way to describe that.
Well said. Strong feelings without a personal vocabulary to be able to articulate that to the people that they should. And this is where, you know, our community, our schools, our families want to spend the time with that middle schooler kid, helping get into their mind and giving them another opportunity to express that, or working to draw that out of them, working to let them understand and see, hey, this person's going to wade through with me to help me express myself.
Yeah, at back to school night. I think it was back to school night. I had an audience of parents, and I had recently dropped my son off at college, and I've, you know, had other kids at college, but this was the first one who moved into the dorms as a freshman. You know, it was kind of the old fashioned. Mm-hmm. And the university president, you know, asked for the parents to come over, and you know, he said something that, and I shared this, but you know, it works for 6th grade, it works for kindergarten. It's like, this is going to be really hard.
Yeah, there you go.
They're going to call you crying. He's like, don't come get them. They're going to be all right. He's like, you know, we see it too. You know, we feel that too. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we have people here who are going to reach out to them and make sure they're okay. I feel the same way about TMS. It's like, we know when kids go home having a bad day or when they're going through something, and we make adjustments. And sometimes, you know, we're still tough on them. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we're always trying to figure out, you know, I need to push this kid because, you know, we need to learn resilience. We can't protect them from everything. It's just it's a complicated equation.
Yeah, kind of back to that idea of what do you have when you have a middle schooler? Well, just like you articulated, your college-age son is going through some things somewhat similar to this middle schooler. So we have a little human being who's in a very valid way experiencing very real things of life, and needs to not be discounted of, oh, they're just an adolescent. Right. You know, adolescence is a little bit of an unfair or unusable term anymore because we don't really know what it means. It's like this season of life that we kind of blame stuff on, this word called adolescence, when really they're a human being that is going through a very natural maturing process. It's just at this season of life, that maturing process is very, very complicated, and you just don't get to see very far beyond yourself. Yeah. You don't really see how you land on other people very well, and you really kind of aren't seeing, unless you're looking as a kid, how somebody's landing on you. You just feel it.
Yes. You know, and I like to read psychology books, and you know, I one of the things I read recently.
I like to read comic books.
Yeah, I bet you do. Mm-hmm. Is you know, we have this extended adolescence for a reason. You know, being a human being is a complicated thing, right. And some of us move through it probably faster than others. Yeah. You know, in particular, it seems like girls move through it a lot faster, just a little bit more sophisticated socially than boys and men are. But regardless, it's a long and what seemingly frustrating time for parents, because you know we have all these expectations. Right. You know, 3 years you'll be in high school, 4 years you're going to go to college, and then you're going to get it. It doesn't always work out like that.
No, it doesn't.
It's complicated,
and it's okay if it doesn't work out that way.
It is, you know, in
a lot of other good ways.
Right, in animals, you know, you're kind of you're 1, you're a puppy, and 2, you're an adolescent, and 3, you're a full-grown adult. Yeah, humans aren't like that. We have this extended period.
Humans don't have the option to eat their young either.
Well, not yet. Yeah, and it's we have that extended period where we're not that great at anything. And it's very natural. It's very complicated, and we have to learn, you know, interpersonal skills, and we have to learn how to, you know, get along with people we don't like sometimes, and we have to do all these complicated things. And some kids get it very quickly. It's like kids don't.
Yeah, you're right. So there's this continuum, and you have no guarantee. Some of the kiddos can kind of be as clumsy emotionally as they are with their feet.
Yes.
At that age, you're developing fast, and you don't necessarily have the coordination that you used to, or in some cases you have a new coordination that you're getting used to.
Yeah.
But you're as clumsy emotionally sometimes as you are.
Yeah.
In your gait.
How'd you do this 37 years?
Oh, I'll tell you how I did it.
Okay.
Yeah, gosh. After I had one session of a school year that didn't go well, and I just felt like I lost my teacher's fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I needed to go back and find it. So my daughter and I went camping, and I journaled and journaled and journaled. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was given a new awakening to why I was doing this anyway. 36 children walk into the classroom, and I am awestruck by the human potential that's in front of me. And I think having a sense of awe is really helpful and is buoyant to me as I try to figure out what I'm doing, because it's not about me, that human potential, but it is there in front of me. 36 units of human potential is awe-striking. It's like standing in front of a mountain of gold mm-hmm. and being responsible for it.
Yes.
So that's awe-striking, and that kind of helps me stay buoyant.
Yeah.
But I get to touch that potential. I get to do something with that potential, and that just really brings me great joy. Right. To know that me as a person, Dave Hinrichs, is going to land on a kiddo and maybe alert them to their potential, maybe push them forward with their potential. Heaven's sakes, to get out of the way of their potential.
Yes.
There's just a whole lot of things. So to be awestruck and have joy is how I look at the kids. And I need that.
I couldn't have said it that well, but that resonates.
You got to feel that, right?
Well, it made me think back to those days where you as a teacher, I'd stumble into work and I was tired, maybe a little underprepared, maybe I wasn't feeling very good. You're like, how am I going to do this? And then they walk in and you're like, you're 100% all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I have to do it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, humanity's most prized possession has landed in front of me.
And it's a jolt.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, the day's over and you had a pretty good day.
And you're exhausted.
For sure.
And you're wiped out. And you had huge pluses and you had a few minuses. Sometimes the equilibrium of those are different.
Yeah,
but you come back because it's just such a meaningful place to be able to touch a child and have what you do mean something to a kid. It's just, it makes the world rock for me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, do you think anyone's still watching the video?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Thanks for hanging on if you did.
I know. We should put a little Easter egg at the end. Maybe.
That's right.
And of our own, yeah. So, well, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Let's do it again sometime.
Let's do. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Was that a nice